The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
The Red Hot Clearance event is on right now at Burlington, and I'm excited for the markdowns. It's all about savings on top of savings throughout the store. This is when I stock up on styles for my closet, home decor, and much more because there's up to 70% off other retailers' prices on clearance. I mean, I'm going every day because these prices, too hot to miss. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow. Styles and selections may vary by location.
Ladies and gentlemen,
can I please have your attention? Can you dig it?
Hey there, listeners. This is Jonah Goldberg, host of the Remnant Podcast, brought to you by the Dispatch and Dispatch Media. I am still in an undisclosed location, in an equally undisclosed but not exact same location, is brother Chris Stirewalt, who's also on a modified limited hangout of a vacation. And I implored him at the last minute to come on to talk about Lord only knows what. Chris Stirewalt, as people know, host of the Sunday show on
The Hill
News Nation.
Sunday. Watch it and at 10 a.m. on News Nation or on your local affiliate, on your local CW affiliate.
If profound edification lasts longer than 4 hours, please consult a doctor. Speaking of inappropriate wordplay and things lasting longer than they should.
Ew.
I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of Epstein. We can go wherever you want with Epstein, but just don't get on this plane. But the fact that at a meta level, right, this is the longest news cycle of any story of Trump's presidency is kind of interesting. No, I mean, maybe except for the passage of the big, beautiful bill thing, which came in and out. But that, like in terms of a scandal story, this is the longest running thing. And what does that tell you?
Well, it's the biggest Trump story since the assassination attempt. It's truly wild. And it has all of the elements that are necessary for a Roaring 20s scandal. It's got sex, it's got intrigue, it's got the people against the powerful. It's got all the elements, but it also is the first Trump scandal, I think, really of both Trump terms and the interregnum, that contemplates a world in which Donald Trump is not the leader of the Republican Party. And I think the interesting part about it is that so Democrats are trying to play Trump's game, right? I don't think that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer believe that there is a QAnon conspiracy to conceal Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his co-conspirators. I think they believe the Inspector General, the report in 2023. I think they believe the Biden DOJ that basically said grace over the whole thing. And I think they think that's true. They're trying to pounce, right? This is a Democrats pounce kind of thing. This is making Republicans uncomfortable. So we're going to cynically exploit it. And we're going to gin up as much lurid skepticism as possible around the subject. So that's an interesting thing about Democrats. It's more interesting about Republicans because in a world where Donald Trump will reign forever, his orders here would be followed, in which you say, well, maybe do it this way. If somehow this had happened in 2024, this story would be wholly different. You would say the Biden administration has failed to release the files, and we know that they're covering things up, and so on and so forth. But if Donald Trump's name were included in some list or on some file or on some whatever, Trump would say, you shut up about it. And they would shut up about it. They would shut up about it because it would hurt his chances to win in November. They wouldn't let the Democrats have it. This is a kind of scandal that a lame duck can have, in which whether you're Dan Bongino or which I always get them mixed up. Who's the white nationalist who had dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Kanye West and Donald Trump?
Nick Fuentes.
That's Nick Fuentes.
I believe so. Yes.
I get him mixed up, but he's not the Proud Boy guy.
No, I'm pretty sure about that.
So why doesn't Nick Fuentes want to join the MAGA team and say what he's supposed to say? Why is Tucker Carlson? Why are these people not doing what Donald Trump is telling them to do? It is because they can imagine a world after 2028 in which it will matter which side of this question you are on for audience engagement, for your clout and your status. So this is why Republicans are acting differently this time, is because it is a scandal that imagines a world in which Donald Trump is not the king.
You've used the phrase "in a world" like 7 times.
Yeah.
And I believe there was a fairly low budget movie about the movie trailer business.
Okay.
And it always,
in a world.
I remember, I think it was in a world where, and I can't get it out of my head now. So, in a world where Jonah has a plan for a podcast.
In a world where dinosaurs are making podcasts. There's one man.
So, I take your point. I think you're probably right. And again, I don't want to, I feel like I've been talking about Epstein forever now, because like our body clocks for news cycles has been adjusted so that 3 days is sort of how long a controversy is supposed to last. And particularly it's just something that really we're not learning anything new. I mean, I think the Spectator had a thing this morning that maybe there are tapes that the FBI has and whatever, all that kind of, okay, like to be determined later. But your point about how this feels like a post-Trump preview, it calls them out. So I keep hearing people say, I happened to catch Henry Olsen on C-SPAN the other day, and he was saying how J.D. Vance, this is Continetti says this often, that J.D. Vance is the clear front runner. I don't think he says shoe in or anything like that, but you get this vibe from a lot of people that it's obvious that Vance is going to be the heir apparent. I've never been remotely persuaded by this. Like if you're trying to bet, you would say he is the best odds right now. But if you gave me a choice between him and the field, I would take the field in a heartbeat. The issue is that as much as this thing is tearing apart, the Epstein stuff is tearing apart MAGA influencers and social media people and various parts of the sort of elite MAGA coalition, it doesn't appear to have any effect on voters or poll numbers or anything like that, right? It is very much
we have plenty of polling now. 2 or 3 polls to tell us that Americans think it's fishy. We have a Quinnipiac poll, we have a CNN poll, we have others that say by a very wide margin, Americans think that Donald Trump, to shorthand it, that Donald Trump's not telling the truth, that something is amiss in this. Does that make them less likely to vote Republican in the midterms? Are there downstream electoral consequences? Very much would remain to be seen. But we know that people have paid attention to the story, and we know that it does not redound to the advantage of the Republicans. On the question of J.D. Vance, my thing is we're a year out from the powerful tractor beam of midterms really kicking in. And then 30 seconds after midterms are over, the 2028 cycle begins in earnest. So we are a year plus out from the beginning of the cycle. And who would you say is the Democratic frontrunner? The Democratic frontrunner is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That doesn't mean that I think that she is necessarily going to be the Democratic nominee. It just means that you can't beat somebody with nobody. And right now she's got a lane to herself. There are a bunch of people who are crowding into the other space of trying to be the normies, and Gavin Newsom and Westmore and Andy Beshear. We could go down the list of all the normie Democrats who are saying, I think I can do it. But you'd have to say right now that she's the front runner. And I think that's J.D. Vance on the Republican side. He's the sitting vice president. He is popular among Republicans. And so you'd say he's the guy to beat. And how that plays out will depend, of course, on what Donald Trump allows to happen. I don't think Donald Trump is going to allow the Republicans to have any kind of a normal nominating process. I do not think that he is going to do what Joe Biden should have done and say, I'm going to stand back. I'm going to let you guys figure out what you want to do. And I'm going to tend to the business of the country while you tend to the business of the party. I don't think that will happen. And I don't even think that Donald Trump will allow the threat of running for a third term to be, I think a litmus test for the 2028 Republican field is going to be, you'll have to say that you think, not only that you think Donald Trump can run for a third term, but that you hope he will. I would imagine that J.D. Vance will be in a position a year from now or 18 months from now where he has to say, well, I think Donald Trump, not only do I think Donald Trump can run for president, is he constitutionally allowed to run for president? Gosh, I hope he will save this nation, continue to hold us to his bosom and protect us from the forces of evil. And I think in that way, the Republican nominating process will be sort of suspended in amber for a period of time, and Trump will make them all wait.
That sounds plausible to me. It does feel as if we are, not to steal content from Nick Catoggio, but it's a very boiling frog point you're making, insofar as we have now been completely acclimatized to the fact, or acclimated to the fact, that it may not be normal, but it's normal to expect that Trump will at least talk about violating the Constitution and run for a third term. And that he will expect the GOP to sanction, encourage, play along, humor, indulge that kind of talk. And I'm sure you've had similar experiences when, prior to this era, if you were giving a talk somewhere and there was some political hothead talking to you about how, Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or even George Bush, they're going to violate the two-term thing and say they're going to run again and blah, 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 blah. You would roll your eyes or patiently explain or say, bless your heart, and say, that's just not the way the system works. That's not what our country is. Now, I mean, you could be wrong about what Trump's going to do, but it's a perfectly reasonable, guess about what Trump would do. And that really does mean the Overton window has moved. All right. So listeners, you should just understand that, since last you heard my dulcet tones or Chris's euphonious pronouncements, much time has gone by because we've had technological issues galore. Chris has had to move several times. I had to examine the entrails of a goat. So it's just been complicated.
It was a good-looking goat, though, Jonah. It was a good-looking goat.
It was. Not afterwards. So I think we've satisfied our rank punditry quotient here. I mean, if you have some burning last point you want to make, but while you were walking the earth like Cain looking for a Wi-Fi spot, I was talking to Adam, and we started talking about the Superman controversy.
Oh, Lord.
And then we started talking about how even the hint of forced politics in movies makes it less likely that I want to go see it, right? Which sort of does raise relevance for the Colbert controversy. But I was thinking, I'd said, there actually are some movies about politics that I like, but I haven't seen one in the theater in years. And so let's start there. What are your favorite movies that are explicitly about politics?
Well, The Last Hurrah is a great, Spencer Tracy in The Last Hurrah is a truly wonderful movie. He plays I think it's Curly. I think it's a nod to the last, and some people say it's what's his name in Philadelphia, but it's a wonderful movie about an overly romanticized version of what machine politics were good for, which was constituent services basically. And Spencer Tracy plays the sort of last of the big city Democratic machine pols. That's a great film. The original Broderick Crawford, All the King's Men, is a wonderful movie. Broderick Crawford is one of the best villains that you will get to see in a film, political or otherwise. His portrayal of Willie Stark, who is only lightly fictionalized Huey Long, is marvelous and a great depiction of the demagogue. Those are both great. I never liked All the President's Men that much. And I don't like All the President's Men. I like some of the vibes, but it's a newspaper movie. And among new movies about the news, it's definitely not the best.
So it's interesting. I honestly don't think I've seen The Last Hurrah.
It's a delight. And the book that it's based on is good. And it's one of the occasions where the movie is actually better than the book, but it's a treat.
So my standard answer, one of my favorite movies, period, is A Face in a Crowd.
Oh, baby, I can't believe I didn't mention that. Yes, of course.
So like, this is a pretty flex boast on my part here. I got to be a guest host on Turner Classic Movies.
What?
And suggest movies about politics. It was so cool to do.
What?
The problem was that
when was this?
It was like in 2016. It had
How
to be
in the
movies
heck?
that were in their library. And so there were some movies I couldn't do, but I got to do the intros and outros and, a little color commentary with, what's his name, Ben Mankiewicz on Face in the Crowd and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh my gosh.
And
Jonah, I've envied you many times, but I've never envied you more than getting to do that. That is such a cool thing.
Yeah, no, I was so psyched. This also sounds like false bragging, but I know you understand what I'm saying. The thrill of being on TV is pretty much gone for me now. But like, I had that sort of giddy, nervous excitement about doing TV when I did that, just because it was just such a cool thing to do.
Well, that's not the news. The news is like, it's the disposability of the news is very appealing, right? You do a show and then you do another one tomorrow, right? You just it's like the Teddy White story about the Columbia journalism student who asked him if he ever has a piece that didn't turn out the way he wanted it to. He said, yeah, of course. And he says, well, what do you do? He said, we publish it because we're going to have another newspaper tomorrow. And the delight of the news business is, and you often quote the great Fred Barnes, how was the piece? It had the unique quality of doneness. Yes. That's the great thing about TV news is we did it and then it's over and no one will ever watch it again. And that's delightful. That's real TV, right? And also you have to be good because you're not talking to weirdos. You're talking to some normal people. There may be some normal people watching or listening if you're recommending excellent old films.
So I made a mistake, though. I said Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I wanted Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They couldn't have it. It was A Face in the Crowd and Man Who Shot Liberty Valance were my
That's a delightful choice. Jimmy Stewart is always a delightful choice. Jimmy Stewart with John Wayne together with a story about how Madisonian democracy is actually supposed to function, is how the rule of law is brought to bear in the American system, told in a fascinating way. That's kind of perfect.
And it has the line. It's my wife's favorite, maybe my wife's favorite line from almost any movie other than The Moon Kills is beer ain't drinking.
Beer ain't drinking.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 40% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
While I was waiting for you to get reset up, I did this early in the infancy of the Dispatch. I was dismayed that some of the younger kids at the Dispatch were not getting movie references of mine.
You mean anyone under 50 was not getting movie references that you were making?
Yeah, but like part of it is like I'll say things like I first noticed this. I'm looking at the piece now. It's like I first noticed this when I would speak on college campuses, and I would say something like, "Now who's being naive?" These were college kids of 15 years ago. They would think I was quoting The Simpsons because they didn't know that The Simpsons was referencing The Godfather. Like, so you start getting kids who were raised on the derivative products of our common culture instead of the actual things. And
what year did Caddyshack come out?
I want to say 80, something like that.
Yeah, 79, 80, something like that.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched Caddyshack was 1990, right? Certainly a decade after the movie had come out. And we all had to watch Caddyshack so that we could get the jokes that the other people were making, right?
Right.
The arrival of VHS made it so that there was a common library of things, and occasionally a new movie would break into that, right? Dumb and Dumber or something would break into. But there was a lingua franca about, okay, dudes, you have to have seen The Big Lebowski, you have to have seen Caddyshack, you have to have seen these things so that when we get together, we can demonstrate our membership in the same tribe by knowing what you mean when you say, where did it go? I think right in the lumberyard. That was like, okay, you're one of us, I see you. Now, I don't know what the shelf life for a meme is, but I don't think it's 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that the dynamic of younger kids watching R-rated movies so that they can understand what their big brothers were joking about or so that freshmen in high school could understand the lingua franca of the seniors is just was a huge part of life. But like I started noticing like Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, that's where the phrase print the legend comes from. And for a bunch of younger people, I mean, it's not like that movie came out when we were kids, right?
No.
But part of it is that Gen Xers, we're the last great generation. And we grew up watching reruns on TV because there was nothing else to watch. And so we saw a lot of older stuff. Like kids today, there's no reason for them to watch some old black and white movie out of boredom because there's just something else. There's a TikTok video that lasts 12 seconds that is more distracting and whatnot. But like our generation, we grew up watching, like I remember the day. Do you remember the movie The Day of the Triffids?
Yes, that's ringing a bell.
Okay, so The Day of the Triffids is a famous sci-fi story they made a movie out of, and it's basically where the trees come alive.
Yes.
And they use their roots basically as feet and they kill people. I don't want to say it was terrible, but not great cinema. But I probably watched that on Channel 9, WOR TV in New York a dozen times because it's what was available to watch. And the cultural fluency problem for a lot of young people today, and the reason why I wrote this piece for the Dispatch 5 years ago was kids, like there's a lack of cultural literacy for a lot of idiomatic phrases that come from movies that they're missing. Like Casablanca is just full of phrases that young people don't know are from Casablanca. Round up the usual suspects, Play It Again, Sam, of all the gym joints, and all that kind of, even though Play It Again, Sam does not actually appear in the movie. We think it comes from that because all the homages to Casablanca have that line in them. Anyway, I just think it's interesting. Back to political movies.
But don't you suppose that our parents, certainly our grandparents, said the same thing about books and said that people of our vintage, nobody reads anymore. And educators used to talk about the furniture of the mind, and that to have a first-rate intellect, you had to have read Shakespeare, you had to have read the Greeks, and you had to have read these seminal novels, these seminal works, that you had to read them to furnish your mind so that you could not only engage in discourse with other people on a common ground, but that these ideas would be taken to heart. And by the time we came along, the movie version, the dumbed down movie and television version of those things had taken the place. Now I say, well, they don't even know, they've never even seen the real thing. They're just aware of a meme that is derived from a Simpsons episode that is of the thing. So it's I think The Onion had a headline recently that was experts warn nation running out of past to exploit. That we are such a self-licking ice cream cone, and that so little new is being, and I suppose it's fair in the sense that there isn't really anything new. There really isn't anything new under the sun. There's like 5 stories in human history, and we tell them with different settings and different kinds of characters, but they're basically the same kinds of stories. But that the nostalgia energy of going back and, for example, when you were alive in the 1990s, in the prime of a young Jonah Goldberg, did anybody think that the 1990s would be a time that anyone would be nostalgic for? Did anybody think that the fashion of the 1990s, are you aware of Fraser Core?
I am not.
So the decor of the television show Frasier, which was the most 90s possible kind of thing. It was set in Seattle, and it had a sort of Pottery Barn energy and a very sort of J. Crew-y kind of fashion sensibility, was very much of its moment, right? Very mid-1990s, very Clinton era. And now Frasier Core is a thing. My former research assistant at AEI, Nate Moore, I would say, oh, you're dressing well today, looking good today. He's like, yeah, it's all vintage. And I realized that the vintage attire that he was talking about was 90s J. Crew, khakis, stuff that I just thought of as clothes. And when we were alive in the 1990s, you definitely, I'm sure, did not say, this will be a time that people will pine for. They will yearn for the aesthetics and energy of the 1990s. In the 1990s, I thought, this is some dumb in-between phase that we're living through to get to the good part.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I kind of thought that, I mean, it probably is because of A, my age, and B, the kind of pop culture that was in the 80s, all the Happy Days stuff and Morning in America and all that. I did have because I had the strangest visceral hatred of the 1970s. Which
yeah.
I say that's strange because I was basically only in single digits in the 1970s. But I remember just like, we had a teacher start a conversation in class in like 1984 about the 1970s because they were doing some oral history project and recording something or whatever. And everyone just sort of looked at me like I was revealing I was a serial killer because I just ranted about how much I hated the 1970s and thought the 1980s were so much better. And I did have a vague sense that the 1980s would be remembered nostalgically as something special, but not the 1990s.
Definitely not the 1990s. So did you ever watch the Rockford Files?
Of course. How dare you, sir?
So in 1985, right, I did not want to watch the Rockford Files because it looked like the 1970s.
Yeah, it did.
It looked poor. Our friend John Podhoretz and I were talking about how bad everything looked in the 1970s. We were talking about movies and the shag carpeting and the ugly colors and the ugly clothes and the ugly cars. And for me, once I hit double digits or so and became a prodigious consumer of popular culture, everything from the 1970s looked bad. It looked poor. It looked dingy. And the 1980s were promising. Like, I wanted to watch Miami Vice. I did not want to watch The Rockford Files. Those shows, I look back now, and it's like, well, they were 6 years apart. They were, They were really right next to each other in turn, and they're very similar kinds of shows. They're detective-y shows, and why was one felt like it was clean and new and modern, and the other one was unacceptable? Now I enjoy The Rockford Files. Now I enjoy 70s stuff in a way that I didn't before, because the distance between what seemed antiquated and dingy and what seemed modern and new, that fades with time. As I get closer to 50, it's like, oh, actually, no big. But I was viscerally anti-70s. The 70s were about Vietnam and drugs and Watergate and bad. And the 1980s were new and fresh and good.
So, have you ever been to Graceland?
Oh, yeah. Well, come on.
Okay, well, just checking. So, like, Graceland's actually, when I'm putting on my egg-hittier hat, one of the points I'll often make is that, very rich people even in the 1920s in many respects, didn't live as well as middle-class people today. And certainly middle-class people in America today, in all sorts of ways, have it better than kings and queens from 200, 300 years ago, just in terms of material prosperity, healthcare,
not dying of blood poisoning.
Yeah. And all that kind of stuff. And it's funny how a lot of people roll their eyes at that point, because they somehow think that it would still be better to be a king 400 years ago than be a middle class, plumber today. And
defecating through an open hole into a moat, hanging your royal tuchus out over a stone to defecate into a moat below. Yeah.
What's interesting to me about that is the way people who sort of reject the premise, it's not that they're making an economic judgment and saying I'm wrong about the economics. It's that they're just sort of envious of being a king and think that would be cooler. But anyway, back to Graceland. Graceland is actually a really great illustration of this in microcosm, insofar as in the 1970s, when I was a little kid, Graceland was synonymous with the most self-indulgent, poshest luxury. Maybe not super sophisticated, but just sort of like an everyman's dream of what you would do if you had unlimited amount of money.
A teenage boy's fantasy of what the good life would be like.
Yeah, 3 TVs, next to each other. It was just huge, right? But when you go to Graceland, when I finally went to Graceland, I mean, the property is nice and it's still very interesting and all that. But the second I saw the orange Formica kitchen countertops, it took me back. That's what we had in my kitchen in the 1970s. It was cheap. It was shabby. And you realize that just the sort of, even the highest end consumer goods in the 1970s, from the vantage point of the 1980s, never mind, 2025, were just really subpar.
One of the mistakes that I have made in my life, one of the many mistakes that I've made in my life, treating the moment that I am in as a transitory thing, as opposed to the thing, right? Like here we are. And I think in a nation that is always in making itself new and reinventing itself with every new generation, the idea of what America is born again and reformulated. And what I have come to appreciate more is that this is what I have. This is what I have. And I should enjoy it more. I should appreciate it more. I should see the the blight more. I should see it as it is. I shouldn't romanticize it. But this is it. And I think for Americans in the 1970s, the decade of my birth, it was a bad time. It was a very difficult time. 1975, the year of my birth, was a low water mark for the American experiment. And it was rough country. Watergate, Vietnam, malaise, disillusionment, lots of problems, and lots of cultural lag from big cultural changes, technological advancements that we were not up to speed with. And people were in a funk, understandably, about all of that. And I think the reason that the 70s have so much resonance now for me, even though I don't have much living memory of them, I once saw the picture of when I was brought home from the hospital when I was a little kid, the picture of me as a baby. And I remember asking my mother...
Was there a cigarette hanging from your lip?
My mother, I'm sure, was hiding one behind her back. And I remember asking my mother when I was like 8 years old, were we poor? And she said, no, it was the 70s. I have to remember that in 2025, for everything that I don't like about 2025 and everything that's wrong with 2025 and all of that stuff, it's not something that I'm going through. It's not something that the country's going through. It's where we are, and it's what it is. And I think part of the reason we don't have better politics and we don't have a better civic life is that people are waiting for us to either get back to or get onto something else, as opposed to living in the world as it is.
You know, I am sure, I know for a fact that people like you, and you in particular, there are certain kind of like polling questions, polling findings that you roll your eyes at and say that's garbage. And we're not going to go through all of them. But
I do. That's true. I'm a real poll snob.
Yeah, I mean, you collect, certain grievances about bad methodology or whatever. I've had many conversations with you about that. The one that one of the ones that I have a profound problem with, and it really dawned on me that, like, okay, this finding is speaking to something other than reality, or other than what journalists want to make it out to be, is every few years somebody asks, have things gotten better since? Right. And one of the benchmark time frames is like 50 years. And a couple of years ago, there was a huge hullabaloo. I remember writing a column about it, about people saying in all sorts of ways, things were much better for the middle class, much better for people 50 years ago. And people were like, see, this shows you how terrible times are. There was literally not a metric that you could think of where it was. I mean, I'll take that back. There were certain things about, like, non-college degree jobs were more plentiful, and I get that, and that could get you to the middle class. But crime, political upheaval, all these sorts of things, the idea that, like, the early to mid 1970s were a much better time for Americans and that more Americans were better off was so preposterously wrong. But the poll finding, it was just another way of saying people are not happy with the current moment. And so they're nostalgic for any round number in the past. But, like,
that's right.
I could get nostalgia for the 80s. I could see their argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get the argument. Things were better in the 80s or the 90s or the 50s or the first half of the 60s. But when you start telling me it's obvious things were better off in 1973, like, all right, you're talking about something else and you're just hanging it on this stupid poll question.
I would love to take my family and live in 1987. I would like to have a similar status that I do today. And I would like to go take it and live in 1987. I liked the way it smelled. I liked the way it felt. I liked the way it looked. I liked it. And that would be awesome.
I'd love to be a syndicated columnist in the late 1980s. I would be making a lot more money. I can tell you that right now.
Right. And, have you followed any of this? So Graydon Carter has a book out, the former publisher of Vanity Fair, editor of Vanity Fair. And there's been this surge of nostalgia for the last days of the Raj of the publishing industry. And I think it was Michael Grinbaum for the Times wrote a piece about it. But I've listened to Graydon Carter interviewed and all of this stuff, and the gobsmackedness of people's response to what the expense accounts were like, what the budgets were like, what life was like in 1990s, in the journalism of the 1990s, when profit margins were enormous, competition was limited, right? So, the best time for everything is always 30 seconds before it changes.
Yeah.
And, Graydon Carter tells the story about an $800,000 an $800,000 cover shoot for Vanity Fair that involved having I don't know whether it was a John Singer Sargent, but some painting flown from London and all of this stuff. And what occurs to me as I am reading all of this, and I dig it. I arrived in the news business right as it was dying. Right, I showed up and the Raj had ended, and I showed up and said, Are you sure it's over? Are we really done? And we were. But I guarantee you, if you found Graydon Carter in 1993 and said, you're living through the golden age of magazine publishing, it's better than it's ever been, and it will never be this good again, he would not have said, well, obviously, of course. What he would have said is, tastes are to this, and people are to that, and the owners are to this, and he would have been grateful for Cy Newhouse, but I don't think he would have said, we've done it. We've unlocked the thing. And this just goes to that same point about you don't know what you've got till it's gone. You don't know what you have until it goes away, and then you get to be nostalgic for it. But I think America has a real bad case of nostalgia. It is a really unfortunate thing. I know the survey work that you're talking about 50 years ago, and one of those surveys that came out, I wrote about at the time because they were talking about it was better 50 years ago. And I wrote, well, 50 years ago, it was illegal in 17 states for people of two different races to get married. So congratulations. Accepting as I tell my kids, as I say, to a point of great annoyance. If I can be humble, I can be grateful. And if I can be grateful, I can be happy. And the humility part of it is rooted in this thing that afflicts our politics, or this thing that afflicts our politics so much is rooted in this lack of humility. And I don't know, many people have said it of late, and it rings very true, which is being open to the possibility that one might be wrong, right? I'm a big fan of Jeff Maurer's Substack, I Might Be Wrong. Being open to the possibility that I don't know every answer and that I might be wrong in politics and culture in 2025. It's just too easy to be wrong. It's just way too easy to be wrong. You can occupy a space, whoever you are, from an ordinary news consumer to a tastemaker, to a politician, to a journalist, to whomever else. You can find a way to live in a space where no one will tell you when you're wrong. And after it is incontrovertible that you are wrong, they will still say, well, actually, the other guys were worse. And we'll sand the corners off of that. And not nobody, I shouldn't speak in that way, but fewer and fewer people live in a world where they have to be open to the possibility that they are not right about the things that they're saying. And to bring it all the way back to Jeffrey Epstein, this is the kind of story where nobody knows what the whole elephant looks like, right? There's nobody. You could go back to Alexander Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, who gave Epstein the original sweetheart deal that let him avoid federal charges. The guy who, when he cut that deal in 2008, I think it was, did not imagine, I assume, that one day he would be the United States Secretary of Labor and lose his cabinet position when the sordid story of that gross deal came out when Epstein was prosecuted the second time. He's been there from the beginning. I doubt he knows what the whole elephant looks like. I doubt he knows what the whole story is. And so we have people who want to say, I will tell you exactly what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. I know everything that happened with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think probably anybody knows everything that happened with Jeffrey Epstein.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Right now, at the Home Depot, you'll find storage solutions made to fit your needs. Grab an HDX Tough Tote to protect your tools. Or keep your sports equipment contained with reinforced snap-fit lids. Or stack up and make better use of your space with bins and totes built to last. Whatever you're storing, we've got the gear to keep it organized and protected at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
All right, my friend. I think we've gone satisfactory. We've gone a satisfactory length.
Can I ask you before you kick me off? Did you see Superman?
I have not seen Superman.
It's good.
Is it?
It's good.
So like, you can settle this issue for me and Adam. I asked Pod, and I was saying to Adam during the interregnum here, I think one of the few things that friends and foes alike can say about our friend John Podhoretz is that he has a finely tuned radar for offenses to Jews and Israel.
Not sleeping on them. He is not sleeping on them.
And he said to me that the Superman Israel controversy is BS and stupid.
What is the Superman Israel controversy?
Oh, this is a very live thing on Twitter and social media that, and again, I have not seen the movie, but there's a whole bunch of anti-Israel people who say this is fantastic. Superman has come out foursquare against the Zionist entity, and the villain in the movie, the evil country in the movie is Israel.
No,
and
the evil country in the movie is obviously Russia.
That was what John's position was, and there are many things that are made up on social media, but if you don't actually know anything about what they're talking about, you can't sometimes tell whether it's made up. So anyway, I'm glad that you're ratifying this.
It's good. It's good. And it's only 15 minutes too long, unlike most superhero movies that are an hour too long. It's only about 15 minutes too long. And it's perfectly good, and the dog works. And I liked it because it doesn't take itself that seriously. It's just a regular old superhero movie. One of the, I hate a portal. And the idea of like, well, we can't write our way out of this problem. So we're just there's a portal and a dinosaur comes through it. So that's the way it is. This is guilty of some portal reliance, but not that bad. And it, unlike a lot of the other things, and now I will shut up, but one of my complaints about all of the comic book movies is that in order to satisfy both the comic book nerds and the actors who they're paying $30 million to appear in the movie, they make it a lot more than it is. Right? They make it a lot more. It's like, what is the larger meaning of Aquaman? What is the fist of grandeur, and whether or not this blah, and you're like, hey, this is a made up movie with portals and stuff in it. So just like, it's supposed to be a romp. It's not supposed to be literature. It's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be entertaining. And Lord, hear our prayer brief. It's supposed to be a place to go sit in an air-conditioned dark room on a summer day. And this doesn't do that. It's not like creating a mythology of Superman or whatever else. It's just a good movie to go see, and I enjoyed it.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I want to see it. I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I'm a Marvel guy, not a DC guy. This is very Sunni versus Shia for some people. And I've never liked the character of Superman very much because perfection is boring. But the problem is like, okay, you've made this character. He's an iconic character in an American culture. I understand that it's difficult to write unironically about someone who's just always going to be stronger, faster, and better than everybody else. But own it, because that's who the character is, and don't try to give him a dark side and don't try to make him, have, an Achilles heel other than kryptonite. And so I think the Superman movies have just never really, any of them have never really worked for me, but I'm willing to give it a shot. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's fun.
Settle a question for me, and then I really will let you go. The movie Heat.
Okay.
With De Niro and Pacino.
I find that movie the greatest overacting in the history of Al Pacino overacting. The greatest Al Pacino overacting of all of the Pacino overacting.
Well, wait a second. Are you saying he was peak overacting in Heat, and even more so than Scent of a Woman? Because I would say Scent of a Woman is the ne plus ultra of Al Pacino overacting.
I would even argue that The Devil's Advocate is worse acting.
Oh, good
Scent of a Woman.
Call. Yeah.
But I think
yeah.
I think Heat is the worst of is Al Pacino. Maybe instead of saying overacting, I think it's the most ridiculous,
most self-indulgent. Yeah,
exactly.
So, okay, but that's not the debate I wanted to have. The question I wanted settled, because I got into an argument with somebody, a dear friend of mine, about this recently. I think the signature flaw of Heat is that both De Niro and Pacino insisted on essentially top billing, that they were going to be the star of the movie. And in order to satisfy both of them, they basically had to make two parallel movies that made the movie much too long. And, De Niro and Pacino, I think they have one conversation in the movie.
Yeah, they're in a restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. Right. And so, like, other than that, it's like Pacino and his team, De Niro and his team. And people are going to come at me and say, I don't understand what the movie's about. Trust me, I understand what the movie's about. But, like, I think it would have been a better movie if it didn't have that structure. And there are people who want to fight me on this. So where do you come down on this?
I think that if John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart could make a great movie together, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is a little too long, little indulgent, but I think if they could make a great movie together, they could do it because they were both confident in who they were, and they were in slightly different lanes. But I agree with you completely that De Niro and Pacino couldn't give each other the space to have one of them end up being the de facto lead, right? So John Wayne's was a bigger movie star than Jimmy Stewart, but Jimmy Stewart's really the lead in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
For sure, yeah.
It's really the story about him, and then John Wayne is sort of over and above. He is hovering over the whole movie, giving it his imprimatur, and that's cool. But neither of them were willing or able to do that, and as a result, the drag in that movie is that you can't wait for the Pacino part of that to be done. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You can't.
I don't care about his marriage, and I don't care that his daughter's mad at him.
You can't wait for, you're like, wait a minute. So she's your second wife. Who's your daughter? I don't know. Like, wrap it up.
Yeah.
Wrap it up, dude.
Yeah. All right. This is the important stuff that, we had to get covered before we could close this podcast. So
ladies and gentlemen, the news.
All right, my friend. Obviously, you'll be back. Love having you. And thanks for doing this.
Heck yeah.
Okay, so Brother Stirewalt has left wherever the hell he was for the last, half hour. My apologies if this episode does not quite reach the meaty part of the middle of the bell curve distribution of quality podcasts, but it's the dog days of summer, and we had lots and lots of technical issues. Speaking of dogs, thank you for all the concern about Zoe. She's still not better. I'm very concerned. Feel very guilty not being home and may have to go home early because she's still just basically not eating and has been to the vet many times, which adds more stress, which I think makes it less likely that she eats. But she's not curling up in a ball and giving up or anything. She still goes on walks and she still drinks water and whatnot. But we can't figure out what's going on, and it is bothersome. All right, so enough about that. And I'm going to figure out how to do a solo for my undisclosed location, and got a bunch of great counter-programming high-end podcasts coming down the pike. Other than that, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.
No, you won't. This is a podcast.